It was supposed to be a quiet dinner. Just me, my daughter, and the soft hum of the restaurant around us. Then my phone buzzed, a single message lighting up the screen. Turn on the camera. It's about to happen. My pulse spiked, fork frozen halfway in my mouth. Who sent it? What was about to happen? And why was my daughter suddenly so pale? I didn't know it yet, but pressing that button would change everything. Her smile lingered across the table, soft and unsuspecting, but the words from that message pulsed in my head like a warning siren I couldn't shut off. Turn on the camera now. It's about to happen. My fingers brushed against my phone again, tempted to lift it, to see if the screen would reveal something, anything, that explained why my stomach felt like it was caving in. The candlelight danced over her face, making her look younger, almost innocent, and yet the silence between us seemed to swell, heavy with something I couldn't name. The front door creaked, not the casual sound of someone arriving home, but a slow, deliberate push, as if whoever was out there wanted me to hear it. Her eyes flickered toward the hallway, just for a fraction of a second, and then she was smiling again, pouring wine with a steady hand. Too steady. My skin prickled. Whoever had sent that message, they weren't warning me about a stranger. They were warning me about the moment I would finally see my daughter for who she really was. A shadow stretched across the floorboards, long and warped under the amber glow. My throat tightened as the air seemed to shift, warmer, heavier, like the room itself knew what was coming. She reached for a glass, but her gaze drifted to my bag, the one I'd set beside my chair. I caught it instantly, that flash of calculation in her eyes before she masked it with another smile. Something told me this dinner wasn't about reconciliation. It was about possession of something I had, and she desperately needed. I forced myself to speak, just to break the suffocating quiet. So what's this all about? My voice was low, measured, but my pulse thundered my ears. She leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the tablecloth, and for the first time, I saw it. Behind the soft expression, behind the carefully chosen dress and warm tone, an edge of urgency so sharp it could cut. It's about making things right, she said slowly, but for that, I need your help. The words hung between us like a wire pulled tight. I thought of the message again. It's about to happen. Maybe it already had. Her tone was velvet, but the request was iron. I need your help, she repeated, watching me as I weighed my reaction before she showed me the real terms. I leaned back slightly, every instinct whispering that this wasn't about reconciliation at all. It was a transaction, and I was the bank she intended to rob without breaking a lock. She set her wine glass down, fingers brushing the rim like she was steadying herself. If I'm going to fix what's happened, I need a start. Capital, seed money, something to invest, so I can pay you back faster than you think. Her words were wrapped in reason, but her eyes carried the fever of someone desperate enough to justify anything. My fork hung motionless halfway to my mouth, the pot roast cooling on my plate as her meaning hit me. You're asking me for more money, I said, letting each word fall slow and deliberate. She smiled faintly, tilting her head as if speaking to a child who didn't quite understand. I'm asking you to see the bigger picture. Without funds, there's no recovery. With the right move, I could have it all back to you within months. She leaned forward, her perfume just faint enough to smell over the food, sweet, masking something sharp beneath. I felt heat climb my neck, not from anger alone, but from the sheer audacity. You've already taken more than anyone could ever pay back in a lifetime. Forged my name, dug me into a hole, so deep the air barely reaches the bottom, and now you wanted to dig it deeper? Her smile twitched, the mask beginning to slip. You think I wanted any of this? You think I enjoy having to come to you like this? She snapped, her voice cutting through the candlelight. The room seemed to shrink around us, the flicker of the flames casting shadows that moved like they were listening. Her hand drifted toward the leather bag at my side, the one with every piece of proof. For a moment, her gaze broke from mine, locking onto it like prey. I tightened my grip on the handle under the table, my pulse matching the ticking of the clock on the wall. And then I realized maybe the message hadn't been about what she was going to say. Maybe it was about what she was going to take. Her eyes didn't leave the bag, and for a moment it was as if the candlelight itself had tilted toward it, throwing her features into sharper relief. I saw the hunger there, not for food, not even for reconciliation, but for possession. The room seemed quieter than it had a second ago, as if every sound was being swallowed by the weight of that stare. I shifted slightly in my chair, pulling the briefcase closer to my leg. "That's not yours," I said, my voice low enough to be mistaken for calm. Her lips curved into something that looked like a smile, but didn't reach her eyes. "It's the only thing standing between us and fixing this. You know that." She leaned forward now, elbows resting on the table, her fingers curling like they were already closing around the handle. "You've crossed enough lines," I told her, each word measured, deliberate, but she only tilted her head, her voice dropping into that same tone she'd used when she was a teenager asking for something she knew she shouldn't have. "It's not crossing a line if it's family. You're holding on to something that belongs to both of us." Before I could answer, she moved, not fast, just purposeful, one step around the table, then another, until she was standing over me, her shadow falling across my plate. My hand clamped around the handle of the briefcase, knuckles whitening, while her fingers hovered inches away from mine. I could feel the heat radiating from her skin, the faint tremor in her hand that betrayed her urgency. We locked eyes, neither willing to let go or give ground. The ticking clock seemed louder, sharper, marking each second like it was counting down to something inevitable. Somewhere deep inside, I understood the person standing in front of me wasn't the little girl who once begged for bedtime stories. She was someone else entirely, and she was about to take what she wanted, no matter what it cost. Her hand closed the last inch in slow motion, her fingertips brushing the leather like she was testing its weight through the air. I tightened my grip until my fingers ached, my other hand braced against the edge of the chair, ready to push back if I had to. The silence between us had changed. It wasn't tense anymore. It was dangerous. Her breath was steady, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of heat, a silent challenge. "Let go," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. The tone wasn't a request. It was a command dressed in sweetness. My jaw locked. "If you want this, you'll have to take it from me." The words left my mouth before I realized they'd formed, and her expression shifted instantly, the veneer cracking to reveal something colder, sharper. Her fingers wrapped around the handle, and for a heartbeat we were frozen, both holding on, both unwilling to break eye contact. I could feel the pull, not just in the bag, but in the moment itself, like the entire evening had been leading here. Then she gave a sharp tug. The chair leg screeched against the floor as I leaned back, refusing to let go. Her grip tightened until her knuckles blanched, her teeth clenched hard enough to tremble her jaw. In that moment, the sound of my phone buzzing in my pocket sliced through the standoff. Not a call, just one vibration, followed by the glow of the screen pressing against my leg. I didn't need to check to know what it would say. My pulse roared in my ears as my mind flashed back to those words. It's about to happen. And now it already was. Her eyes flicked toward my pocket at the same instant the vibration stopped, but neither of us loosened our grip. The briefcase was a lifeline for both of us, though for entirely different reasons. I could feel the tension in her arm, the slight tremor in her wrist as she tried to pull it closer. My pulse hammered against my ribs, each beat screaming at me to stand, to end this standoff before something irreversible happened. Her lips parted, but the words came out sharper than I expected. "You think holding on to that will save you?" The corner of her mouth twisted, almost into a smirk. "It won't." She yanked harder this time, her shoulder jerking forward. My chair scraped against the wood floor, a harsh sound that seemed to echo through the apartment. I shifted my weight and stood, still clutching the handle. We were now face to face, so close I could see the faint shimmer of sweat along her hairline, the pulse in her neck quickening with each second. Her free hand hovered at her side, like she was debating whether to use it. I knew that look. It was the one she wore when she had already decided, but was just waiting for the opening. Then the sound hit, a single knock at the door. Not polite, not hesitant. One solid, deliberate knock. Her grip tightened instantly, her eyes darting toward the hallway. For the first time that night, she looked uncertain. Expecting someone? I asked, my voice low but edged. She didn't answer. Her gaze shifted between the door and the briefcase, calculating. And in that pause, my mind raced back to the message again. It's about to happen. Whoever was behind that knock, they were part of it. Her grip faltered for just a second, the kind of hesitation you can feel more than see. The knock hadn't been loud, but it carried weight, like the person outside knew exactly what was going on inside this apartment. Her eyes flicked to the hallway again, then back to me, and I caught the faintest tremor in her jaw. Another knock followed, slower this time, almost patient. The sound crawled through the room and settled in my chest. She let go of the briefcase with one hand, but didn't step back. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, trying to mask whatever was burning behind her expression. "Stay here," she said, her voice low. She took one step toward the door, but I shifted, keeping the briefcase close. "Who is it?" My question hung there, unanswered. She didn't look at me as she reached for the handle, her other hand curling just out of sight, near the seam of her dress. Something about the way she moved, controlled, calculated, told me she wasn't about to welcome a friend. The door opened just a sliver, enough for me to see the silhouette of a man standing in the dim hallway light. His voice was low, urgent, and whatever he said made her shoulders stiffen. She stepped outside, closing the door most of the way, but not completely. A narrow strip of space remained, and through it I caught fragments of their conversation, words like "tonight evidence," and "transfer" slipped through, each one twisting the air tighter around me. Then her voice dropped even lower, and I couldn't hear her anymore. The quiet was worse. I stared at the gap in the door, my grip on the briefcase tightening until my knuckles throbbed. Whoever was out there, they weren't here by accident. And suddenly I knew, if I stayed sitting here, whatever happened next would not be in my favor. The murmur beyond the door grew sharper, like whispers sharpening into blades. I caught the man's silhouette shift, leaning closer, crowding her space. She didn't step back. Instead, she angled her body so her face was hidden from me, one hand clutching the edge of the door, as if ready to slam it shut at any moment. I rose from my chair, the briefcase still in my grip, my pulse pounding in my ears. The narrow strip of light through the doorway framed her profile just enough for me to see her lips moving. Fast now. The cadence clipped. Then, the man's tone dropped into something final. Whatever he'd said made her still, her head lowering slightly, like she'd just been handed an ultimatum she couldn't refuse. Her hand twitched at the door, and I thought she might close it completely. Instead, she pushed it wider, glancing back toward me. The smile she wore was wrong, too quick, too thin. "I'll be just a minute," she said, her voice smoother than the tension in her shoulders allowed. Then she stepped fully into the hallway. The instant she was gone, I moved toward the door, the weight of the briefcase like an anchor in my hand. My ear hovered near the frame. Words filtered through. "Tonight, signatures before anyone knows." Each syllable snapped something tighter inside me. My mind flashed to the text, to the warning, to the way she had looked at my bag like it was worth more than I was. A sudden scrape of shoes against the floor outside jolted me back. The conversation had ended. The door handle began to turn. I stepped back, clutching the briefcase close, bracing myself, because when she walked back in, whatever mask she'd been wearing would be gone. The door eased open, slow and deliberate, as if she wanted to make sure I was still where she'd left me. Her eyes found mine instantly, searching, calculating, almost measuring the ground between us. Whatever warmth had been in her voice earlier was gone. She stepped inside, closing the door with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. For a moment, she didn't move, just stood there, her hand still on the doorknob, the faintest trace of that hallway conversation clinging to her like smoke. Then she walked toward me, steady, unhurried, her gaze fixed on the briefcase. I could feel the air change with each step she took, as if the space between us was a fuse burning towards something inevitable. She stopped just short of arm's reach, tilting her head slightly. "You heard, didn't you?" It wasn't really a question. Her tone had that quiet certainty people use when they already know the answer. I didn't reply, my grip tightening around the handle until the leather creaked. Her eyes flicked down, catching the motion, and something like a smirk tugged at the corner of her mouth. "That's not going to help you," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "If you walk out with that, you're not walking out with me." The weight of the words sank in, heavy and cold. She wasn't bargaining anymore. She was warning. Before I could answer, the faintest sound came from outside the window, a car door shutting, followed by the murmur of voices. Her head snapped toward the sound, eyes narrowing, jaw tightening. The tension in the room coiled tighter, and for the first time that night, I wasn't sure if the real danger was inside the apartment or waiting just beyond the glass. Her gaze stayed fixed on the window, her posture rigid, like a predator trying to decide whether to flee or pounce. I followed her eyes toward the glass, catching a glimpse of movement. Two shapes in the streetlight, close enough to the building to be watching, their heads tilted upward, toward us. She turned back to me, and the calm mask she had been wearing was gone. "Give it to me now," she said, each word clipped, urgent. The softness was stripped from her voice. What remained was raw command. I didn't move, didn't blink, just kept the briefcase close against my side. Her breathing quickened. She took a step forward, then another, closing the gap until the faint edge of her perfume was sharp in the air between us. "You don't understand what's about to happen," she whispered, her tone sliding into something almost pleading. But her hand was already moving toward the case again. I stepped back, my heel catching the leg of the chair, the scrape echoing too loud in the tense quiet. Her eyes darted to the sound, then back to mine, narrowing. Outside, a voice called something muffled, the tone low but urgent. The shapes beyond the glass shifted, one of them lifting a hand toward an earpiece. The realization hit like ice. Whoever they weren't here for me. They were here for her. And the moment they came through that door, whatever game we were playing would end, one way or another. Her eyes flicked between me and the window, the muscles in her jaw working like she was chewing down panic. "They can't see you with that," she said, nodding toward the briefcase, her voice sharper now, stripped of all disguise. "If they do, we're both done." I didn't move. Every instinct screamed to keep my ground, but the pounding in my chest felt like it might betray me. Outside, one of the figures spoke into a small device clipped near his shoulder, the low murmur barely audible through the glass. The other stepped back toward the curb, scanning the street like they were expecting backup. She reached for me again, this time with both hands, fingers curling around the briefcase handle and the edge of my sleeve. "Please," she whispered, but her grip wasn't the kind of touch meant to persuade. It was to take. The words were just dressing for the force behind them. I pulled back, my heel pressing into the leg of the table, the candlelight trembling in its glass holder as the air between us seemed to stretch and tighten. She looked toward the window again, and when she turned back to me, her expression had changed, less desperation, more calculation. "They're not here for you," she said, almost calmly now, like she decided on something. "But if you don't hand that over, you'll wish they were." Her fingers slid down the handle, slow and deliberate, testing my grip as another set of footsteps echoed outside the apartment door. That was when I realized the knock we'd heard earlier hadn't been the beginning. It was a warning. And the next sound I heard would be the end. The hallway outside was no longer just background noise. It felt alive, closing in. The faint click of a boot heel against tile echoed once, then again, deliberate and steady. She didn't flinch this time. Instead, she straightened, her hand still on the briefcase, and met my eyes with steadiness that chilled me more than any outburst could. "You have seconds," she murmured, almost conversationally, though her knuckles whitened against the handle. "Decide if you're walking out of here with that, or if you're walking out at all." Her words sank into me like ice water, the calmness and the more dangerous than shouting ever could be. Through the glass, I caught a glimpse of another shadow moving in, joining the two already stationed outside. Their posture was too sharp, too deliberate for chance. One of them spoke again into a device, a small, clipped phrase I couldn't make out. I shifted my weight, keeping my grip tight, my eyes darting between her and the window. "Who are they?" I asked, my voice low, careful. She gave a faint smile, half amusement, half warning. People who don't care about the truth, only about what they can prove or destroy. A sudden thud rattled the apartment door. Not a knock this time, but a push, testing the strength of the lock. She glanced over her shoulder, and for the briefest moment I saw it. A flash of fear breaking to the steel in her expression. It was gone in an instant, replaced by something that looked dangerously close to resolve. The next push on the door would not be a test. It would be an entrance. And when it came, neither of us would be ready for what followed. The second shove against the door sent a dull vibration through floorboards, the kind you don't just hear, you feel in your chest. She didn't move away from the briefcase. Neither did I. The space between us felt like a wire pulled so tight it was one breath away from snapping. Her voice dropped to a murmur, almost as if she was speaking to herself. If they get in, there's no going back. She flicked a glance toward the door, then at the window, calculating angles, distances, and maybe exits. I kept my stance, my grip on the handle firm, but my pulse was pounding in my ears like a war drum. Another hit came, harder this time. The door frame groaned under the strain. Outside the window, one of the men turned his head sharply toward the noise, speaking into his earpiece again. The other adjusted his stance, shifting weight onto the balls of his feet. They were getting ready for something, and it wasn't a conversation. She leaned in suddenly, close enough for me to see the flecks of gold in her eyes. "You think you're the only one holding evidence?" she hissed. "That bag is just a piece of story. The rest?" Her gaze darted toward the hallway. "The rest will burn if they walk through that door." The lock rattled. A single screw gave a faint metallic ping as it hit the floor. My stomach sank. Whatever game she'd been playing, whatever truths she'd been holding back, they were seconds away from being ripped into the open. And in that moment, I realized the warning in that text wasn't just about her. It was about me. The door gave a sudden, violent jolt, so strong it rattled the glasses on a nearby shelf. She flinched but didn't step back. Instead, she reached into the inside pocket of her coat and pulled out a small, battered flash drive. It dangled from her fingers for only a second before she shoved it into my palm. "Hide it," she said, the urgency slicing through her words. "Whatever happens next, you don't let them touch it." The weight of the drive felt heavier than it should, like it carried not just data, but 100 silent screams. Before I could ask what was on it, the pounding at the door stopped. The quiet that followed was a relief. It was worse. The kind of silence that comes before something breaks. Her eyes flicked toward the window. The two figures outside had vanished from sight. My skin prickled. I knew what that meant. They weren't retreating. They were moving. And then, from the back of the building, a sound cut through the tension, a sharp metallic snap, like a lock giving way. She froze. Our eyes met, both of us knowing the same thing without saying it. They weren't coming to the front anymore. Somewhere in the shadows behind us, a floorboard groaned. Her breath caught, and I could hear it. The faint shift of weight, the whisper of a shoe against the old wooden floor. Someone was already inside. My grip tightened around the flash drive until the edges dug into my skin. She moved closer, her shoulder brushing mine, her voice a bare thread of sound. "They'll try to separate us," she murmured. "If they do, you keep walking. Don't look back, no matter what you hear." Another creak, closer now. My eyes darted to the hallway's dark mouth, but it was just shadow, deep, silent, swallowing the edges of the light. She reached behind her, her fingers brushing the clasp of the briefcase. But then she froze. A small red appeared on the wall beside her head. Her gaze snapped to me. No words, no explanation, just a raw, unfiltered knowledge that we were now under a sightline. Somewhere, someone had eyes on us. A floorboard screamed under a heavier step, and in that razor-thin second between instinct and danger, I realized the front door was still intact. Whatever had entered the building had done so without breaking a single thing in its path, which meant they already had the key. Her hand moved first, swift, deliberate, sliding the briefcase beneath the table just as a faint hum of static filled the air. I didn't see the source, but I felt it like electricity crawling over my skin. Somewhere beyond the darkness of that hallway, someone exhaled, The red dot on the wall trembled, then disappeared. Silence swelled, pressing into my ears until even the sound of my own heartbeat seemed too loud. She gave me a single, sharp nod, the kind you give when the time to run is now. Yet neither of us moved. A faint click echoed from the door at the far end. Not the front door. The back one, the one that led into the alley no one used. We had seconds, maybe less. Her eyes locked on mine, fierce and urgent, before darting toward the narrow passage beside the kitchen. I knew what she was telling me. Take it, go. But my legs refused to obey, rooted by the suffocating certainty that whoever held the key wasn't alone. The shadow came first, a tall silhouette stretching unnaturally long against the hallway wall, followed by the slow, deliberate rhythm of boots on tile. He wasn't rushing. He didn't need to. That kind of walk belonged to someone who already believed they'd won. And as the light from the dining room spilled just far enough to reveal his hand, I saw it, gloved, steady, and holding something small and black, aimed directly at me. His gaze was unreadable, hidden beneath the shadow of his hood. But the weight of it was crushing. My throat tightened as the metallic scent of the weapon reached me. Sharp, cold, final, the air between us seemed to shrink, every second stretching into a lifetime. Behind him, the open doorway leaked a faint yellow light from the alley, swaying gently as if someone else stood just beyond it. She moved again, slow, calculated, her fingers curling around the edge of the briefcase. Not a sound escaped her, but the message in her eyes was deafening. Don't break. Don't look away. I swallowed hard, forcing my heartbeat into silence, pretending the trembling in my hands was nothing more than the flicker of the light above. Then his head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. A faint crackle, a low voice, male, steady, slid through the air from somewhere outside. His grip tightened. The gun didn't waver. That's when I realized he wasn't here to talk. He was here to deliver a message, and we were the chosen audience. The room felt smaller now, the walls pressing in, the air thick and damp. One wrong move, one sound too loud, and everything would explode. Yet it was her, the woman sitting barely 3 feet from me, who leaned forward, lips parting, ready to say something that could shatter the standoff entirely. And then she did. Her voice cut to the silence like a blade, steady, deliberate, almost gentle. "You're making a mistake," she said, each word hanging heavy in the stale air. For a moment, he didn't move. His fingers stayed curled around the trigger, but his eyes flickered, betraying a sliver of hesitation. I could feel the tension coil tighter, like a rope pulled to its breaking point. My palms were slick now, my breathing shallow, every muscle in my body screaming to move, but knowing that even the smallest shift could ignite everything. She didn't stop. Her tone deepened, laced with something dangerous. "If you do this, it's not just that she'll destroy, it's you." His jaw clenched. A shadow crossed his face, and I knew she'd hit something raw. The man in the alley spoke again, louder this time, and his voice sent a chill crawling down my spine. Whatever orders were being given, they weren't patient ones. He stepped closer, the barrel now less than a hand span from her. I wanted to shout, to pull her back, to tell her to stop provoking him. But my voice was gone. My eyes darted toward the briefcase, still half hidden in her lap, the faint glint of metal showing beneath the edge. My mind was screaming one question over and over. What's inside, and why is he willing to kill for it? And then she reached the latch. Her fingers moved slowly, almost theatrically, as if every second she delayed was an act of defiance. The faint click of the latch sounded louder than it should have, slicing through the alley's damp stillness. The man's eyes darted toward the briefcase, his knuckles whitening around the gun. For a fraction of a heartbeat, I thought he might fire right then. The lid rose only an inch, enough for a cold gleam to catch the light. His breathing hitched, and I caught it too. That metallic glint wasn't jewelry, wasn't cash. It was something far more dangerous. My stomach twisted as my mind ran through every possibility, each more terrifying than the last. He leaned in, desperate to see more, and she used that moment to lock eyes with me. It was a silent message, urgent, final, and meant only for me. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out everything else. Then, without warning, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the far end of the alley. Someone else was coming. His head snapped toward the noise, his grip tightening on the weapon, torn between the briefcase and the approaching threat. And in that split second of indecision, she moved. Her hand shot forward, slamming the lid of the briefcase shut with force that echoed against the brick walls. The man recoiled, his eyes flaring in shock, then rage. The footsteps drew closer, faster, the sound bouncing to the narrow passage like an approaching storm. She didn't wait for him to recover. In one fluid motion, she kicked the briefcase toward me. It scraped across the wet concrete, spinning just enough for the metal clasp to face upward, an unspoken dare to open it. My hands twitched, caught between instinct and terror, as his gun whipped toward me. The figure at the far end finally emerged, a silhouette backlit by the flickering street lamp. Their face was hidden in shadow, but their voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. "Drop it. Now!" The tension splintered instantly, like a cable pulled too tight about to snap. The man hesitated, and in that heartbeat, I realized the worst truth of all. Whoever this newcomer was, they weren't here to save us. They were here for the same thing, and they were willing to kill for it. The man's grip on the gun tightened, but his eyes flickered, just enough for me to see the calculation happening behind them. The newcomer stepped closer, their boots slicing through shallow puddles, each footfall deliberate, as if they knew the sound alone was meant to suffocate us. Rain began to fall again, thin and cold, cutting down between us like a curtain. I could hear my own pulse, a steady drumbeat in my ears, as the briefcase sat between all three of us, small, silent, and impossibly dangerous. The man with the gun tilted his head, a slow smirk curling across his face, and then, without looking away from me, he spoke to the shadowed figure. "If you want it, you'll have to step over me." The stranger's laugh was low, humorless, a sound that made the hair on my arms rise. "Not over you," they said. "Through you." And in that moment, I understood this wasn't a standoff. It was a fuse, burning fast, and we were standing at the end of it. My muscles tensed, my breath sharp in my throat, because I knew, whatever happened in the next few seconds, there would be no undoing it. The air thickened, as if the night itself was holding its breath. The man with the gun shifted his weight, the metallic click of his finger brushing the trigger, sounding louder than the rain. The stranger's shadow loomed closer, swallowing what little light the street lamp still offered, their face still hidden, intentionally, like a card waiting for the final play. I glanced toward the briefcase, not daring to move, yet feeling its presence like a live current between us. My mind was racing, not with fear, but with calculation, because I realized something neither of them seemed to see. We weren't alone anymore. A figure, smaller, lighter on their feet, lingered just beyond the alley's edge, barely visible through the curtain of rain. The gunman noticed it too, his gaze darting just enough for the stranger to take a single step forward, one that made the ground feel unsteady beneath us. And then, almost imperceptibly, I heard a faint hum, mechanical, deliberate, like something powering up, just out of sight. In that split second, I understood this wasn't about the briefcase anymore. Something else was coming, and it was already in motion. The rain eased for a moment, but the silence that followed was sharper than any downpour. The gunman's eyes flicked between me and the stranger, measuring, calculating. The barrel of his weapon still trained, but his focus fractured. The figure beyond the alley stepped closer, each footfall deliberate, as if marking time until something unseen arrived. That faint hum grew louder, steady, mechanical, but pulsing now, like a heartbeat that wasn't human. I could almost feel it vibrating through the wet pavement. The stranger's posture changed, their head tilting just enough to acknowledge the sound, their shadow stretching over the gunman like a dark tide about to rise. And then it happened. The first flash of blue light against the rain, bouncing off the walls, moving closer. It wasn't police lights. It wasn't a car. Whatever it was, it moved like it was searching, scanning, hunting. My chest tightened as I realized if it found us, none of us, gunman, stranger, or me, would matter anymore. The gunman must have felt the same, because his hand trembled, the weapon dipping just slightly. The The stranger's eyes caught mine for a fraction of a second, and in that wordless exchange, I understood this was our only moment. And yet, no one moved, because we all knew whatever was coming. It was already too late to run. The hum deepened, no longer just sound. It was pressure, curling to the air, rattling my ribs, making the rain shiver mid-fall. The blue light swelled until it painted the alley walls, erasing the shadows, turning every face ghostly and unreal. The gunman's breath hitched. His finger twitched on the trigger, but his aim faltered, lost in whatever was coming down that narrow stretch of wet concrete. The stranger didn't flinch. They took one slow step forward into the full wash of blue, revealing eyes that seemed to drink in the light, and something else, a faint crackle, like static, jumped from their fingertips, vanishing before it touched the ground. The gunman saw it too. His massive control cracked, just enough to let raw fear bleed through. The source of the light emerged. Not a vehicle, not any machine I knew, but a sphere hovering inches above the ground, rotating in silence except for that pulsing hum. Lines of cobalt energy traced across its surface in jagged patterns, shifting like living veins. And it was scanning us, no, me. My skin prickled as the beam slid over me, a warmth that cut deep, pulling something out, or maybe putting something in. The stranger's gaze locked with mine again, harder this time, urgent, as if to say, don't react, don't move. But my heart was already betraying me, pounding so loud I was sure the thing could hear it. The gunman finally broke, stepping back, his weapon lowering. But it was too late. One of the sphere's panels split open with a hiss, and a tendril light coiled outward, reaching, tasting the air, moving straight toward my face. I should have screamed. I didn't, because deep down, I knew this wasn't here to kill me. It was here to take me. The tendril of light stopped just inches from my skin, hovering, trembling, as though deciding if I was worthy or dangerous. Every drop of rain around us seemed to freeze in midair, suspended in the glow. The alley had gone utterly silent. Even my breath sounded too loud, too intrusive for this moment. Then, without warning, the tendril lunged forward, straight through me. It wasn't pain. It was invasion. My mind flooded with images that weren't mine. A city drowned in that same blue light. Faces staring upward in awe and terror. Something vast and alive descending from the clouds. My knees buckled, but unseen hands, or maybe the light itself, kept me standing. The strangers shouted something I couldn't hear over the hum, their voice swallowed by the sphere's rising pitch. The gunman ran, slipping on the wet concrete, vanishing into the night. But I couldn't move, couldn't even think, because the light wasn't just in me anymore. It was looking through me, pulling memories, fears, every secret I had ever buried, and scattering them like ash into the storm. My heart felt like it might shatter from the pressure. Then, impact! A blast of energy roared outward from my chest, shoving the stranger back, rattling windows up and down the block. The tendril snapped away, recoiling back into the sphere. The blue glow dimmed for the briefest heartbeat, then flared again, stronger, hungrier. This time it wasn't scanning. It was opening, splitting wide to reveal a darkness inside so deep, so endless, it felt like the edge of the world. And I knew in that instant that whatever was in there had just chosen me. The darkness inside the sphere pulsed, slow and deliberate, as if it were breathing. My body wanted to run, but something deeper, something primal, kept my feet rooted to the ground. The air around me thickened, each inhale like pulling smoke into my lungs. Somewhere far off, sirens wailed, but they sounded muted, warped, as if the world outside this moment no longer existed. The stranger stumbled forward, one hand outstretched toward me, the other clutching their chests like they were holding something in. "You don't understand," they rasped, their voice breaking under the weight of urgency. "If you let it in, it never leaves." Their eyes burned with desperation, but before I could respond, a shape began to emerge in the sphere's core, tall, fluid, almost human, yet bending in ways no body should. It stepped forward, and every shadow in the alley bent toward it, like ink bleeding toward a spill. Its presence was suffocating, not from fear alone, but from the overwhelming certainty that it knew me, every weakness, every regret, Every choice I wished I could undo. My heartbeat synced with its pulse, until I couldn't tell which belonged to me anymore. The first drop of rain in what felt like hours hit my cheek, snapping me out of trance. The figure froze, tilting its head, and for one terrifying second it smiled, not with its mouth, but with its voice inside my skull. You've already opened the door. The sphere began to collapse inward, pulling everything, the stranger, the light, the shadows, into its center. And I realized with a cold, certain dread, it wasn't leaving empty-handed. The pull was relentless. My heels scraped against the wet concrete as the force yanked me toward the collapsing sphere, the air screaming in my ears as if the world itself were being sucked into a drain. The stranger's fingers slipped from mine, his face twisting in silent terror before his body was devoured by the vortex. The sound that followed wasn't a scream. It was a sickening silence of something erased from existence. I clawed at the ground, my nails breaking against the asphalt, but it didn't matter. The force wasn't just physical. It was inside me now, dragging at every thought, every heartbeat, every memory. My mind was flooding with images that weren't mine. Faces I'd never seen, lives I'd never lived, all rushing past like water through a cracked dam. The figure in the sphere reached out again, its limbs stretching far beyond what should be possible, its touch grazing the edge of my mind like cold steel. Then, just as my last breath was about to tear free, light exploded from somewhere deep in my chest. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't an attack. It was resistance. Every fear, every moment of shame and regret burned white-hot until the pull faltered for the first time. The sphere shuddered, the figure recoiling as if burned. The rain came harder now, each drop a bullet of sound, and with a final, deafening crack, the vortex imploded, collapsing into a single point of darkness before vanishing into the night. I lay there, gasping, my palms stinging from the shredded skin. The street was empty. No stranger. No sphere. Just the faint hum of the city returning. Like a song I'd forgotten. But deep inside, where no one could see, something had been left behind. It wasn't fear. It wasn't peace. It was a door, and I knew it was still open,